In the top stories, government to establish a sovereign wealth fund to save, invest, and protect national wealth. The government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines forms task force to respond to the rising cost of living. And the U.S. has announced it will shut down the border road with Canada over security concerns. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Major Newscast. Today is Wednesday, the 1st of April. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, on Tuesday, a major piece of financial legislation was tabled in Parliament, which will transform how St. Kitts and Nevis manages and protects its national wealth. The Sovereign Wealth and Resilience Fund bill establishes a national fund it's designed to save, invest, and safeguard the country's financial resources over the long term. The proposed law creates a structured pool of national wealth, drawing from sources such as a portion of citizenship by investment revenue, government contributions, and investment returns. The fund will support future generations, provide a financial buffer during crises, and help finance key national development projects. The mover of the bill, Minister of Finance, Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew, outlined the government's approach in Parliament.
This bill is about how we treat the blessings of today. It is about whether unusual revenues are consumed and forgotten or invested and preserved, Madam Speaker, to strengthen us as a nation. It is about whether a small island developing state vulnerable to hurricanes, economic shocks, and global uncertainty will continue to drift with events, or whether we will build the financial strength to withstand them. It is about whether our children and grandchildren will inherit only the memory of opportunity or the benefit of wise stewardship. Today, Madam Speaker, we choose stewardship.
Officials say the fund will reduce reliance on emergency borrowing following natural disasters or economic shocks while strengthening the country's financial position. Strict rules govern how money can be accessed, with parliamentary approval required, and clear limits on withdrawals for disasters, economic downturns, or approved infrastructure projects. Dr. Drew said these safeguards are the result of extensive consultation and careful policy design.
Speaker, this is therefore not an impulsive measure. It is the result of policy development, technical advice, consultation, and reflection by us, this administration, over several years to bring this landmark piece of, or this landmark bill to this House to be passed into law, Madam Speaker. And let me say this plainly. This government is determined that the people's patrimony must never again be handled without discipline, transparency, and accountability. Madam Speaker, this is why this fund is established by statute. This is why it is governed by rules. This is why there is an independent board. This is why there are audits. This is why there is public reporting. This is why there are limits on withdrawals. This is why there are safeguards against political misuse, Madam Speaker.
Meanwhile, Attorney General the Honourable Garth Wilkin emphasized the strict legislative framework that will guide the independent board who will oversee the fund.
It is also within the bill, in Schedules 1 and 2, the rules and provisions in respect to the membership of the board and the procedures of the board. There also is a provision in terms of the ancillary powers of the board, so any board member will clearly be aware of what their obligations and their powers are. And naturally there's oath or affirmation of confidentiality for any board members, because there will be confidential information that the board will have. But generally, what is the balance of the fund, where it's invested, its geographical locations, etc., will be of public record. and be able to be attainable by anyone in any year. There's also financial year, there's also a report that must be submitted to the minister as well to Parliament. The accounts must be kept, must be audited, there must be compliance with the host country laws. There must be not, a person on the board, for example, might get information from the investment managers. They can't then use that information for their personal gain.
The new law represents a shift towards disciplined, long-term financial management aimed at building resilience and protecting national wealth. In other news, Attorney General the Honorable Garth Wilkins says while the cultivation and use of cannabis in specific circumstances has been decriminalized in the Federation, full legalization is not feasible due to international legal and financial constraints. On Tuesday, Mr. Wilkins told the National Assembly that the government's approach seeks to balance reform with responsibility while remaining compliant with global obligations.
The reason why cannabis cannot be legalized in St. Kitts and Nevis is twofold. One, we are parties to treaties that do not allow non-medicinal, non-religious uses of cannabis. What that means is that if we were to legalize, our corresponding banking relationships would almost come to an end. Cannabis has been decriminalized in many countries. It has, however, not been legalized in many countries because unless there is a universal decision that all countries or most countries agree that it is no longer a substance which can cause harm, then now the income from it could be considered legal. However, we have to transact through international financial systems. There are corresponding banks in the US. There are corresponding banks in EU. There are corresponding banks in Asia. Most of those places, actually all of those places, cannabis is still illegal. So if you were to make money from cannabis in St. Kitts and Nevis, and those countries, those banks were to realize that anybody in St. Kitts and Nevis could legally make money from cannabis, they would cut off our banking system from the international financing system because it would be in essence us transferring money that was gotten from an illegal process, proceeds of crime. And then we would not be able to send money to our family members who are in school in the States or family members who are in school in the UK. It would cause irreparable harm to our banking system.
At the same time, Mr. Wilkins pointed to progressive steps already taken by the Labour administration, including the introduction of legislation that addresses the religious, personal, and medical use of marijuana.
And that is why we've taken the structured approach like many other responsible countries have done, which is to ensure that convictions were eliminated. So we rectified the past. We created the Rastafari Rights Recognition Act, which creates a regime after consultation with the Rastafari community to register their places of worship for free, such that they can participate in the sacrament in those places with full freedom and legality. There's a freedom of conscience regime where the court said anybody, adult in the privacy of their home, with the freedom of the conscience who wishes to use the substance can do so. There's a process for registration as well. And there's also the medicinal cannabis regime.
Senator Wilkins said the government remains committed to a careful, structured approach that protects both national interests and people's constitutional rights. A website, cannabisclarityskn.com, has also been developed that provides information and answers popular questions about marijuana. Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew says his government will endeavour to shield the public from the rising cost of fuel on the global market. The price of oil and gas has surged in recent days as the conflict involving the United States, Israel and Iran continues to impact global markets. Earlier this week, however, Prime Minister Drew offered the assurance that his government is working to buffer the effects of those increases and limit the burden on consumers.
We know that the cost of fuel would affect the cost of living. This government will do all that it can to limit that shock from reaching our people. We will absorb as much as we can, as we did post-COVID, as we have been doing, to ensure that we protect our people from this shock. But these shocks will continue to affect us unless we get to energy independence and we get to the sustainable island state where we can produce our own energy here, our own water sources are reliable, food, and the other aspects of our sustainable island state agenda.
The Prime Minister also pointed to ongoing efforts to strengthen the country's energy security. He said the government has been taking a proactive approach to developing energy infrastructure and reducing long-term vulnerability to global price shocks.
We did not wait for the crisis to happen. We were proactive in making sure that our agenda in establishing a sustainable island state that is rest on 7 pillars, that at the center of it is energy independence through renewable energy infrastructure development.
Prime Minister the Honourable Dr. Terence Drew. Moving now to news on the regional scene, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has established a national cost of living task force to respond to rising energy prices linked to the ongoing Middle East war. Officials say the task force will take a dual approach, providing immediate relief while also pursuing long-term structural changes. Measures under consideration include targeted tax relief to ease the impact of high energy costs on citizens. On the supply side, the government said the task force will work with CARICOM partners to identify alternative sources of food from countries like Ghana and Brazil, while also advancing energy cooperation and renewable projects to lower utility costs. The initiative is designed to protect the country's economic stability and support vulnerable Vincentians as global prices continue to rise. The task force comes as global oil prices climb, with Brent crude now around $110 per barrel, amid shipping distributions linked to the Strait of Hormuz. The body is chaired by the Ministry of Finance and includes representatives from key government ministries, labor unions, and technical agencies. Private sector stakeholders, including the Chamber of Industry and Commerce, major importers, and the state-owned electricity company Vinlec, are also part of the framework. Approximately 700,000 farmers in Jamaica will soon benefit from a $50 million climate resilience project approved by the Green Climate Fund. The 5-year initiative, titled Adapt Jamaica, will target 6 central parishes where farmers are facing increased climate pressures from hurricanes, drought, and unpredictable rainfall. Officials say this is the first single-country climate investment Jamaica has received from the fund, with about $40 million provided as grant financing. The project will be implemented in Trelawney, St. Anne, St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, St. Catherine, and Manchester, areas that account for around 70% of the country's agricultural production. Agriculture Minister Floyd Green says the initiative will introduce practical climate-resilient solutions at the farm level, including solar-powered irrigation, storm-resistant greenhouses, and improved water management systems. The program will also include training for farmers, expanded access to financing through the Development Bank of Jamaica, and a new climate information system to provide real-time weather and crop guidance. Officials say special focus will be placed on supporting women, youth, and other underserved groups, while also introducing cash for work programs and infrastructure to respond to climate-related damage. The initiative will also see the installation of weather stations and rainfall monitoring systems to better support agricultural planning. Internationally, the United States government will close a nearly 9-mile stretch of road along its border with Canada from the 1st of July, citing security concerns. The road, better known as Border Road, runs between Montana and Alberta and has been used for more than 8 decades by farming communities on both sides. U.S. officials say the decision is in response to a rise in irregular migration and drug smuggling. Although the road is located on the U.S. side, it has been maintained by authorities in Alberta, where officials have described the closure as unfortunate. Officials say some Canadian residents rely on the route to access their homes, and the move will disrupt long-standing cross-border connections. The Alberta government has already set aside funding to build a new road parallel to the existing route, with construction expected to begin this month and finish by summer. The area is also a key trade corridor with thousands of trucks crossing daily and billions of dollars in goods moving between the two countries each year. The Democratic Republic of Congo has qualified for the FIFA World Cup for the first time in 52 years after a 1-0 extra-time win over Jamaica in their Intercontinental Playoff final in Mexico. The decisive moment came in the 100th minute when Axel Twanzebe turned home from close range following a deflected corner. The goal was checked for a possible handball, but VAR, the video assistant referee, confirmed it was clean, sparking celebrations from the Congolese side. Jamaica, who were pushing for a return to the World Cup for the first time since 1998, struggled to create clear chances and could not find an equalizer. Congo had earlier seen 2 goals ruled out for offside, but maintained pressure throughout the match before breaking through in extra time. The result seals their place in the expanded 48-team tournament, where they will face Portugal, Colombia, and Uzbekistan in the group stage. For Congo, the victory marks a historic return to the global stage, ending a wait of more than 5 decades. We now take a look at the weather. Partly cloudy conditions are expected across St. Kitts and Nevis, with a moderate chance of showers as a low-level trough approaches the area. Today we'll see mixed clouds and sunshine with about a 40% chance of brief showers. Tonight will remain partly cloudy with a similar chance of showers continuing into the night. Winds will be from the east-northeast at 9 to 19 kilometers per hour. Seas are expected to be rough with northerly swells reaching between 2.1 and 3.1 meters. A high surf warning remains in effect. Temperatures will reach a high of 31 degrees Celsius or 88 degrees Fahrenheit with an overnight low of 22 degrees Celsius or 72 degrees Fahrenheit. Sunset today is at 6:24 p.m. Sunrise tomorrow is at 6:05 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Major Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.